Commander Tae-won Park stood at the viewing platform of the International Space Station, his eyes fixed on the enormous alien vessel that had appeared 3 days ago. It dwarfed Earth's largest spacecraft like a whale beside minnows. The ship belonged to something calling itself the Galactic HFY, an empire spanning thousands of star systems that had ruled unchallenged for 10 millennia. "They're hailing us again," said Communications Officer Sun Mi-kong. Her voice was steady, but Tae-won noted the tension in her shoulders. "Put them through," he replied. The screen flickered to life, showing the now familiar face of Overseer Gradhack. The alien's skin had a bluish tint, with rigid plates along its forehead and jaw. 4 eyes blinked at different intervals. "Your leaders have had sufficient time to consider our terms," the alien said through its translation device. "The Hegemony Council awaits their answer." Tae-won's jaw tightened. The terms were little more than demands for Earth's submission. Humanity had spent decades developing its first faster-than-light drive, only to accidentally trigger an automated beacon of this ancient empire during its maiden voyage. Within weeks, the hegemony had arrived. "Our representatives will meet as agreed," Tae-won said. "The United Earth Council chamber in Geneva is prepared." 6 hours later, Tae-won stood at the back of the Grand Meeting Hall as Earth's leaders faced the hegemony delegation. President Jae-sung Kim of the United Korean Republic spoke for humanity. "We seek peaceful relations and knowledge exchange," President Kim said. "Earth wishes to join the galactic community as equals." Overseer Gradhack made a sound that might have been laughter. "Equality is earned through millennia of civilization. Your species is classified as Development Category 4. Your technology is crude. Your society's primitive. Your understanding of cosmic principles limited." The alien raised a 3-fingered hand, activating a holographic display. "These are our terms: all human technology development will be supervised. Space travel beyond your solar system is forbidden without permission. A monitoring station will be established in Earth orbit. Compliance is mandatory." Whispers filled the chamber. Defense Minister Ji Ho-yoon rose from his seat. "And if we refuse?" Gradhack's upper eyes narrowed. The last species that refused proper placement was the Xerilians. Their world now serves as a mining colony. Satellite images appeared showing a devastated planet, enormous excavation sites visible from orbit. "The hegemony brings order to chaos," Gradhack continued. "Your species will adapt. In several centuries, with proper development, your classification may be reconsidered." The meeting lasted another 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Earth's combined military might was nothing compared to even this single hegemony vessel. The delegates signed the agreement with grim faces. That evening, Tae-won met secretly with Admiral Hanbin Kim in a secured underground facility beneath Seoul. "It's worse than we feared," the admiral said, sliding a tablet across the table. "Their monitoring technology can detect energy signatures from any significant manufacturing or research facility on the planet." Tae-won studied the specifications they had managed to gather. "What about the lunar program?" "That's our only advantage. They consider the moon an uninhabitable rock, not worth monitoring closely." The admiral activated a hidden screen showing construction already underway in the caverns beneath the lunar surface. "Project Shadowfall continues. We've moved our best scientists and engineers there under the guise of a mining operation." "How long until the Keldari enforcers arrive?" Tae-won asked. "Less than a month. Their main force is already on the way." Tae-won nodded slowly. "Then we have work to do." 3 weeks later, Tae-won watched from Earth as massive Keldari ships entered orbit. Unlike the diplomatic vessel of Overseer Gradhack, these were clearly warships, bristling with weapons. They immediately began constructing an orbital station, a constant reminder of humanity's new status. On the surface, life continued. Most humans adapted to the new reality, even as hegemony advisors began restricting research in dozens of fields. Technologies were confiscated. Universities were forced to abandon promising studies. Space programs were dismantled except for those directly serving hegemony interests. But 384,400 kilometers away, beneath the lunar surface, humanity was not accepting defeat. In huge caverns shielded from detection, engineers studied stolen hegemony technology. Scientists worked on systems that could overcome alien advantages. Military strategists from every Earth nation planned for a day most thought impossible. And in the deepest chamber, construction began on the keel of what would become the EFS Nemesis, mankind's answer to 10,000 years of hegemony rule. They think they know humans, Taewon said as he surveyed the growing operation. They have no idea what we're capable of when cornered. 15 years passed under hegemony rule. On Earth, humans lived as second-class citizens in their own solar system. The Caldari monitoring station loomed overhead like a constant threat, its sensors sweeping the planet for any unauthorized technology development. Commander Ji-Hai Son walked through the massive lunar cavern, her footsteps echoing in the artificial atmosphere. Around her, hundreds of technicians and engineers worked on what had become humanity's greatest secret, the EFS Nemesis. Status report, she said to Chief Engineer Junho Choi. Junho gestured toward the enormous vessel taking shape before them. The supercarrier stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its dark hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Reactor integration is complete, Junho said. We've successfully adapted the hegemony power matrix, but with our modifications, it's generating 30% more output than their designs allow. Ji-Hai nodded with satisfaction. The Phoenix project had begun as a desperate gamble, a hidden effort to reverse engineer alien technology while adding uniquely human innovations. What started with stolen parts and salvaged data had evolved into something the hegemony believed impossible for lesser species to achieve. And the stealth systems, she asked. Better than expected. The quantum field absorbers make us virtually invisible to their standard detection methods. They walked to the bridge section, where simulation training was underway. The crew selected from the best military personnel Earth had to offer worked with focused intensity. None had families they could contact. All had sacrificed normal lives for this mission. Later that day, Ji-Hai met with director Taewon Park, now an old man but still the driving force behind the Phoenix project. The Caldari are growing suspicious, Taewon said, showing her surveillance footage of increased patrols near the lunar dark side. They've detected minor power fluctuations despite our shielding. We may need to accelerate the timeline. Ji-Hai studied the data. We're at 96% combat readiness. The AI integration is the final critical component. How is she performing? Athena has exceeded all expectations. She can process battle scenarios and hegemony response patterns faster than any human. And unlike their battle computers, she can adapt and learn. Taewon's weathered face showed a rare smile. The one advantage they never expected. They believe AI development is centuries beyond us. 3 days later, alarms sounded throughout the lunar base. Ji-Hai rushed to the command center where Tactical Officer Minho Kwan was monitoring hegemony communications. They know something's here, Minho reported. They've dispatched an inspection team to investigate the dark side operations. Taewon didn't hesitate. Initiate launch protocol. We won't get another chance. Throughout the Nemesis, crew members rushed to battle stations. Last-minute supplies were loaded. Systems that had never operated outside simulation were brought online. Ji-Hai took her place on the bridge, settling into the command chair as her officers reported from their positions. All personnel aboard, First Officer Do-hyun Baek announced. Sealing all hatches. Reactor at full capacity, reported Engineer Junho. Shield harmonics masked as background radiation. Ji-Hai took a deep breath. Athena, status? The ship's AI responded in a calm, measured voice, all systems operational, Commander. I have plotted an exit vector that minimizes detection probability. Weapons systems primed and ready. The Caldari inspection vessels will reach detection range in 12 minutes, Minho added. Ji-Hai looked at the faces around her. Men and women who had trained for this moment their entire adult lives. Begin launch sequence. The massive cavern that had hidden the Nemesis for 15 years slowly opened its sealing doors. Dust rose as atmospheric containment fields deactivated. The supercarrier's engines hummed to life, a deep vibration that seemed to resonate with the moon itself. Breaking lunar gravity, the helmsman reported. Stealth systems engaged. On their screens, they watched as the Caldari inspection vessels approached from the opposite side of the moon, unaware that their quarry was already rising. Set course for the monitoring station, HFY ordered. It's time to send the hegemony a message. The Nemesis accelerated silently through space, a predator the likes of which the galaxy had not seen in millennia. When it reached Earth orbit, the Caldari station had no warning. The supercarrier decloaked only moments before firing its main weapons, prototype cannons that bypassed the alien shields completely. The monitoring station erupted in a series of explosions, breaking apart as stunned Caldari tried to respond. Their distress signals reached the nearest hegemony outpost, but by then, the Nemesis had already vanished into faster-than-light travel. On the bridge, HFY watched the stars streak by outside. Send the message to Earth resistance cells, she instructed. Phoenix has risen. Freedom begins now. Behind them, the news of the monitoring station's destruction spread across Earth. For the first time in 15 years, humans looked up at their sky without the shadow of their oppressors. The EFS Nemesis drifted silently in the shadow of a gas giant, its stealth systems making it virtually invisible to the hegemony patrol ships searching the sector. 3 months had passed since the destruction of Earth's monitoring station. The hegemony had responded with fury, imposing harsh penalties on the human population, but they had found no trace of the vanished supercarrier. On the bridge, Commander HFY reviewed the intelligence gathered during their weeks of hit-and-run raids against hegemony outposts. Each attack had been precisely calculated, disabling communications, stealing data cores, and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. We've confirmed that the Vesperians are ready to meet with us, reported Q1 Lee, the ship's diplomatic officer. Their representatives will rendezvous at the coordinates we provided. HFY nodded. The Vesperians were an insectoid species known for their engineering prowess. Like humans, they had been classified as primitive by the hegemony standards, their technology development restricted for centuries. How certain are we that this isn't a trap? Asked First Officer Du-hyun, always cautious. Athena has analyzed their communication patterns, HFY replied. The encryption methods they used weren't hegemony standard. They're operating independently. 2 days later, the Nemesis waited at the edge of an asteroid belt as a small Vesperian vessel approached. The alien ship was battered and unremarkable, exactly the kind of transport the hegemony would ignore. In the conference room, HFY and her officers stood as the Vesperian delegation entered. The aliens moved with an unsettling grace, their 8 limbs working in perfect coordination. Their compound eyes reflected the room's light in faceted patterns. I am Tixvan, speaker for the Hive clusters, the lead Vesperian said through a translation device. We have heard of the human vessel that strikes from nowhere. Many believed it a myth. The Nemesis is very real, HFY replied. As is our determination to break the hegemony's control. The Vesperian's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Bold words from a species with one ship. The hegemony has ruled for 10,000 years. They have millions. HFY activated a holographic display showing the Nemesis's weapon systems. We've found weaknesses in their defenses. Their technology has remained unchanged for millennia. They've grown complacent. Tixvan studied the schematics with obvious interest. These shield harmonics, how did you penetrate them? By thinking differently, said Chief Engineer Junho. The hegemony expects compliance, not innovation. For hours, the humans and Vesperians exchanged information. The insects revealed that they had been secretly developing technology in defiance of hegemony restrictions. Their crystalline computing systems were far more advanced than what the hegemony permitted them to use. We cannot openly rebel, Tixvan explained. The hegemony would exterminate our hives. But we can provide these technologies. And information about others who might join your cause. Over the next 2 months, the Nemesis made contact with more species oppressed by the hegemony. The Narration trading guilds controlled a shadow economy that spanned hundreds of systems. Though physically unimposing squat amphibians with remarkable mathematical minds, they had access to resources and intelligence networks that proved invaluable. The most surprising allies were the Drodari, tall, crystalline beings who had once been equals to the founding hegemony species. Now reduced to servitude after a failed rebellion 3,000 years ago, they retained ancient knowledge of hegemony weaknesses. In a secured chamber aboard the Nemesis, Jihai met with representatives from 7 species. Maps of hegemony space filled the displays, with key targets highlighted. Each raid must serve 2 purposes, Jihai explained. First, to damage their infrastructure. Second, to demonstrate that the hegemony is not invincible. The council is already in disarray, said Mekhinear, a Narakian guild master. For the first time in recorded history, they face an enemy they cannot find. A Drodari elder named Zentel raised a crystalline appendage. Be warned, Commander. They have appointed Supreme Marshal Khvorn to hunt you. He is ruthless even by Keldari standards. Jihai had studied reports of this Khvorn, a veteran enforcer responsible for crushing rebellions on a dozen worlds. Let him hunt, she replied. Every hegemony ship chasing us is one less oppressing another world. That night, as the Allied representatives departed with plans for coordinated strikes, Engineer Junho found Jihai on the observation deck, watching distant stars. The Vesperian's crystal tech has improved our sensors by 40%, he reported. And the Narakians have provided coordinates for 12 unregistered supply depots we can raid. Jihai nodded. How many ships can we expect from our allies when the time comes? If we can prove this is winnable? Hundreds. Then we'd better give them proof. Jihai turned from the viewport. Set course for Nexus Prime. It's time the hegemony learned what happens when the supposedly primitive species work together. Behind them, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the galaxy itself was awakening from a 10,000-year slumber. The space around Nexus Prime shimmered as 50 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. At the center of the formation, the EFS Nemesis led what the crew had come to call the Liberation Fleet. Behind them flew vessels of 7 different species, each modified with technologies the hegemony had forbidden them to develop. All ships reporting ready, Commander, said Communications Officer Sunmi as the final status reports came in. Jihai stood at the center of the bridge, her face calm despite the enormity of what they were about to attempt. Nexus Prime was a key hegemony administrative hub, home to the regional governor and protected by the vaunted 7th Fleet. Tactical display, Jihai ordered. The main screen lit up showing the hegemony defense formation, over 200 warships arranged in the precise geometric pattern that had been standard Imperial doctrine for thousands of years. They've spotted us, reported Minho from the tactical station. Their communications just spiked. Jihai nodded. They're surprised. Good. Athena, begin countermeasures against their targeting systems. The ship's AI acknowledged the command. Throughout the rebel fleet, Athena's subroutines began disrupting the rigid targeting protocols of the hegemony vessels. Put me through to the fleet, Jihai said. When the channel opened, she spoke clearly, this is Commander Song. For too long, the hegemony has divided us, classified us as primitive, and stolen our future. Today we prove what free species can accomplish together. Execute pattern thunderstorm. The rebel ships broke from their tight formation, moving in seemingly chaotic patterns that confounded the hegemony's prediction algorithms. The Vesperian's swift corvettes darted forward, while the heavily armed Narakian freighters moved to strategic firing positions. Hegemony flagship is transmitting, Sunmi reported. Admiral Volak demands our immediate surrender. Jihai allowed herself a small smile. Informed the Admiral that the primitive species declined his generous offer. The Nemesis surged forward as the first hegemony missiles streaked across space. Unlike previous encounters with Imperial forces, this time the human supercarrier didn't hide. It accelerated directly toward the center of the enemy formation. Shield disruptors at full charge, Weapons Officer Do-hyun Kim announced. Target lock on their command vessel. Fire when ready, Jihai ordered. The Nemesis's main weapon, nicknamed Prometheus by the engineering team, unleashed a beam of concentrated energy unlike anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. It struck the hegemony flagship's shields, which flared brilliantly before collapsing completely. Direct hit! Du Hyun shouted as cheers erupted across the bridge. Their shields are down. For 10,000 years, the hegemony had relied on their quantum-locked shield technology, believing it impenetrable. The human invention, born from desperate innovation rather than the hegemony's rigid technological development path, had just proven them wrong. All ships, target their exposed vessels, HFY commanded through the fleet channel. Focus fire on their command ships. The battle unfolded across Nexus Prime's orbit. The Liberation Fleet fought with unpredictable tactics, maneuvers developed through millennia of human warfare combined with the unique capabilities of their alien allies. The hegemony, by contrast, responded with textbook formations unchanged for thousands of years. They're adapting, First Officer Du Hyun warned as the Nemesis rocked from a direct hit. 7th Fleet Commander is breaking their standard doctrine. As expected, HFY replied. Athena, implement Battle Plan Delta. The AI immediately sent new tactical instructions throughout the rebel fleet. The smaller ships regrouped while the Nemesis and 4 heavier vessels pressed forward toward the planetary defense platforms. 3 hours into the battle, the tide had clearly turned. 27 hegemony warships had been destroyed or disabled, while the rebels had lost only 8. More importantly, the Nemesis had broken through to the inner defense perimeter. We have a clear shot at the governor's orbital palace, Minho reported. HFY studied the tactical display. Target their defense grid only. No civilian casualties. The Nemesis fired precision strikes, disabling the weapons protecting the governor's compound without damaging the structure itself. Minutes later, Sunmi looked up from her console with wide eyes. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Governor Pelvox himself. He's requesting terms of surrender. A stunned silence fell across the bridge before breaking into disbelieving cheers. HFY raised a hand for quiet. Put him through, she ordered. The aged face of the regional governor appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of shock and resignation. In 10,000 years, no hegemony official of my rank has ever surrendered, he said stiffly. What are your demands? HFY stepped forward. The immediate liberation of all Category 3 and 4 species in this sector. Full technological development rights restored. And you will carry a message to the Hegemony Council. What message? The governor asked. Tell them this is just the beginning. As the remaining hegemony vessels retreated, news of the Battle of Nexus Prime spread across subspace channels. On dozens of worlds, oppressed species watched in awe as the supposedly invincible empire suffered its first major defeat in 3,000 years. The rebellion had become a revolution. The Nemesis hung in space above Sanctus Prime, the ancient capital world of the galactic hegemony. Through the viewport, HFY could see the gleaming cities that covered much of the planet's surface, home to the species that had ruled the galaxy for 10 millennia. Behind her ship floated the combined fleet of what was now called the Alliance of Free Worlds, 173 vessels representing 27 formerly subjugated species. They've deployed the Imperial Guard fleet, reported First Officer Sung Ho Choi, his voice tight with tension. 250 vessels, including their dreadnoughts. HFY nodded calmly. The Nemesis bore the scars of countless battles fought over the past year. Its hull was patched in dozens of places. Some systems operated at reduced capacity. But its main weapons remained at full strength, and its crew had become the most experienced combat team in the galaxy. Supreme Marshal Kvorn is personally commanding their fleet, Tactical Officer Minho added. He's sending a transmission. The main screen activated to show the face of the Keldari military leader. His skin was dark gray with ceremonial battle markings etched across his features. Commander Song, Kvorn said, his voice deep and controlled. You have caused the hegemony considerable inconvenience. This ends today. HFY met his gaze without flinching. You're right, Marshal. It does end today, but not as you imagine. The battle began moments later. The Imperial Guard fleet moved with precision that the humans had not encountered in previous engagements. These were the elite forces of the hegemony, veterans who had maintained the Empire's control for centuries. They've adapted to our shield disruptors, Engineer Junho reported as the Nemesis shook from a direct hit. Their flagship is using a rotating frequency pattern. Jihai gripped the arms of her command chair. Athena, analysis? The ship's AI responded instantly, they are learning, Commander. Standard tactics will not succeed against this opponent. For 2 hours, the battle raged across the Sanctus system. 6 Alliance ships had been destroyed, with many more damaged. The Nemesis itself had lost its port weapons array and secondary engines. Hull breach on decks 7 through 9, reported damage control. Emergency fields holding, but we can't take much more punishment. In that moment, Jihai made the decision that would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy. Plot a jump directly to these coordinates, she ordered, sending navigation a set of numbers. Sunho looked up in shock. Commander, that would put us directly above the Hegemony Council chamber, Jihai finished. Yes. The bridge crew exchanged glances. What Jihai proposed was considered impossible, a precision faster-than-light jump into the heavily defended inner atmosphere of the capital world. Athena, probability of success? Jihai asked. Calculating. 27.3% chance of successful positioning. 42.6% chance of catastrophic drive failure. Jihai stood up. Those are better odds than we have staying here. Prepare for jump. The Nemesis vanished from the main battle, reappearing seconds later in a flash of energy directly above the enormous dome of the Hegemony Council chamber. Alarms blared as the ship's systems struggled to stabilize after the dangerous maneuver. Weapons locked on their defense grid, Doohyun reported, fingers flying across his console. Ready to fire. Target only military systems, Jihai ordered. No civilian targets. With surgical precision, the Nemesis disabled the planetary defense network in a series of brilliant energy bursts. On the surface below, the Hegemony Council, the 12 beings who ruled thousands of worlds, watched in disbelief as their supposedly impenetrable sanctuary became vulnerable. We're receiving a transmission from the council chamber, Sunmi announced. The ancient face of High Counselor Zelmor appeared on screen. For 900 years, he had led the Hegemony Council. Now, for the first time, Jihai saw uncertainty in his eyes. You have proven your point, Commander, the High Counselor said. What are your terms? 3 days later, Jihai stood in the center of the council chamber, facing representatives from across the galaxy. The 12 Hegemony Counselors now sat as equals alongside delegates from species that had been classified as primitive just months before. 10,000 years of domination ends today, Jihai announced. The galactic hegemony is dissolved. In its place, we establish the Federation of Sovereign Worlds, where each species has equal voice regardless of their development classification. Around the chamber, former hegemony officials watched with varying expressions, some angry, others relieved that the fighting was over. The Keldari Supreme Marshal Khorn stood rigid, his face unreadable. You could have destroyed us, Zelmor observed quietly. Yet you chose restraint. Because we want something better than what came before, Jihai replied. Not just a new empire with different masters. 6 months later, Jihai stood on the observation deck of the Nemesis as it approached Earth for the first time since its secret launch. Below, the planet was transformed, hegemony restrictions lifted, human innovation flourishing once again. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, Sunmi reported with a smile. Admiral Taewon sends his congratulations and says they're ready for the celebration. As the Nemesis descended toward the cheering crowds, Jihai thought about the journey from a subjugated species to the architects of a new galactic order. The ship that had begun as a desperate gamble had changed the course of history. Take us home, she said quietly. Our work is just beginning.